folks. So glad to see you today. I'm here with my friend and colleague Tim Sharp in Clarksville, Tennessee. I've had the opportunity of spending a couple of days with Tim in conversation. And last night we were talking after dinner, and the conversation sort of migrated to mentors and models that have shaped us in our vocational journeys. And we thought it'd be worthy of sharing a little bit of that with you today. And so, Tim, tell us a little bit about some of the mentors who've been so incredibly important to your journey.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thought, really is. And starting with sort of a definition of a mentor is really someone who has an informal relationship with you in a teaching role. And you're looking to, formally teachers are supposed to work and give you something, but a mentor usually is an informal relationship. But interestingly, though, me, like others, probably a couple of my chief mentors were teachers of mine. One chiefest of which moved into my vocation was Don Hustad, who was my major professor at Southern Baptist Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, the School of Church Music there. But what I learned from Don was how to really balance life and vocation. He was a great musician. He was an incredibly important thinker. He wrote the book Yuba Latte. He was organist for the Billy Graham Crusades. He was a classical organist trained in France. But there he was with that greatness, who gave me the benefit of the doubt and extended his education and work with me beyond the classroom. He was responsible for the first teaching position that I got. He took that interest in me. And so listening to and learning from Don was so important. But I think the chief lesson I got was that balance of excellence and joy in my vocation, but also balancing it with life. Because he was not all work. He had family. He taught a Sunday school class.
Really?
And I thought, that's the kind of human I want to be.
Right.
I love my work, but I also want to balance this with family, free time. He rode horses, and he had horses in Indiana. These are the things a mentor and a protege would know about their mentor, because he shared that part of life with me. He shared his life, and he gave me the benefit of the doubt. He saw something in me that he said, it's worth my investment. So Don was a big, and another great mentor was J.P. Jardine, who was at my first college that I attended. He took me to concerts. He gave me a key to his office so that I could listen to recordings after hours to bring myself. Because I felt like I was behind in college. I didn't feel like I was up to where my peers were.
Oh, really?
And he sensed that I had this inferiority feeling. He said, well, let's see what we can do to fix that. So he helped to nurture that, and that was beyond the call of a formal teaching relationship. So I think it's someone that gives you the benefit of the doubt, someone that shares something of themselves with you, and I would say, and it moves beyond a formal relationship. It moves into more of an informal conversation with people like that you hope to be or is your mentor.
Yeah. Gosh, that's wonderful. There's so many mentors that I've gotten to the privilege of sitting at their feet, through my life. But I'll just mention two. One, or maybe the first, and very significant, is Mary Beth Wicks, who is the wife of our minister of music in Alpharetta, Georgia. And Mary Beth was an incredible classical pianist, had perfect pitch, but had also been a keyboard player for the contemporary Christian group Truth. That may not mean anything to a lot of folks listening to this recording, but for some, the Truth was a big deal. In the 70s. Mary Beth was really, in a sense, my first real piano teacher. She helped me get ready for college auditions. Again, I really, looking back on it, I was really sort of behind the curve in terms of technique, although I had started playing the piano when I was 8 years old. But Mary Beth was the first teacher who could really move me forward. And she got me ready for college. And I had a little bit of an unusual college experience, is that I actually lived at home and commuted to Georgia State University in Atlanta. So I continued to have I continued to go to my home church, and Mary Beth and her husband Tom were so encouraging to me in those early years as I was studying music at an undergraduate level and looking toward a path of church music, and they just gave me opportunities at church.
That's great.
I was the accompanist for the youth choir, when I was a junior and senior in high school, and so Mary Beth Wicks was just an incredible mentor, encourager, nurturer.
Yeah.
Fast forward beyond undergraduate, graduate school, early years. Through my friend Terry Goolsby, I met Sigrid Johnson, who was the artist in residence at St. Olaf College. And Sigrid came and led choral workshops when I was at Providence Baptist in Charlotte. I think came to Dallas twice. If she were at an ACDA event, we would find a way to connect, or I would sit in on a rehearsal. I once visited with Sigrid and Bob when I was in Northfield, Minnesota. I even went to their home one day. And Sigrid was both sort of mentor and model in a sense, because I saw this incredible musician who shaped sound, but did it in such incredibly gracious and humane ways. There was never a sense of, I'm way up here and maybe you're way down here. And I'm really specifically talking about the way I saw her treat the average singer in a church choir.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
She pushed, she nudged, she taught, and she loved.
That's great.
And that was so beautiful, and it taught me, that this is the kind of musician minister I wanted to be. And so in a sense that was mentor and model.
And I'll say, I think to our credit, probably in that particular ages, one good thing I can say about us at that time is that we probably were teachable. When both of us admit that we were a little bit behind, I think one of the things that they probably recognized is you're teachable. And I think that's that's something a mentor needs to know, because if you're not teachable, I'm not sure there's a lot of motivation on a mentor's part. But a mentor that sees you hungry and asks, that's a invitation in. Right?
It really is. It really is. Well, and honestly, if you don't have a teachable spirit of some sort, do you even pursue a mentor?
Probably not.
So I don't know. It's almost a chicken or egg, kind of thing. Yeah. Well, what about models that have mattered to you? Maybe we'll call them institutional or organizational models.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah, as we discussed before, I am always, and you are too, we're always looking for models. I mean, I'm looking for best practices all the time.
Right. That's kind of the corporate word, right? But it still works.
It works. And I want to find a machine that works. I want to find a system that works. I want to find a relationship. So what's the key? How do you maintain that good relationship? So great models are always on my mind, and I'm looking at, even in today's corporate world, I'm looking at how does Amazon do what it does? How does Chick-fil-A do what they do?
It's really fascinating.
Fascinating. So great models is in a way more of a heart, a mentor that doesn't necessarily have a heart, but is going to teach you, a lesson. So great model that I recall for me was College Hill Presbyterian Church in Cincinnati. It was a church that just embodied a beautiful program of intentional worship, but it was creative. I mean, it was and I never even knew the word intentional till many years later. But I think I learned intentionality through watching that program of intentionality. That they just didn't get it from a book. They created it for the context, and I thought, oh man, I want to be a part of and I want to help lead in a place that's that intentional. So that was a great formational place and model for me to see early in my career, when I had just gotten through seminary and I was trying to pull it all together to find a church that I thought was really functioning. I'm sure they had problems, but what I could see was a model that says, I want to aspire to that.
Right. I remember going to visit with my friend Bob Hatfield at Dawson Memorial Church in Birmingham, Alabama. Bob was minister of music there for, I think, over 30 years. And while in a sense Bob was a mentor, the Dawson Memorial Program, music ministry, and the scope of what they were doing with so many children involved in children's choir, a robust youth choir, that entire ecosystem. Later, there was a contemporary service as well. It was really interesting to me to see how it all worked together.
Right.
And, I could have conversations with Bob from time to time about the joys and the challenges of managing that big a program, but also for such a long tenure, which also has another sort of aspect to it. How do you stay at a place for a long time, right? And how do you keep the Sunday by Sunday, year after year, ministry fresh and vital I couldn't apply everything necessarily in the situation I was at for various reasons, partly because the scale was different, partly because resources are different, but there were underlying principles that I could take away and go, okay, I can adopt that and I can adapt that for where I am. Part of the modeling in some ways, as I look back on it, was actually Bob's work ethic when I think about it, and one of the things, I know I'm sort of morphing between models and mentors here, and maybe that's okay. One of the things he mentioned to me at one point is when you go to a new church, don't change anything for a year. Add something, start a new ensemble, add a new program, but really pay attention to the landscape and the way that this model in this context is working at this time. Are there other models that come to mind that were helpful to you?
What does come to mind in terms of other models is what you said about you can't apply it all. But I have throughout my life sought out models. I mean, I had to go to a monastery and see what is the office hours model. What is to understand really much of the liturgy to understand this is why they pray every 3 hours. This is a work prayer environment. How did that inform some stuff that I've inherited in worship? So and to go to Iona community, I mean, it's a wonderful privilege to get to travel, but to go to a community and say, how did that model with John Bell and these wonderful songs, what did that come from? What led to it? So I think studying models that have meaning is an incredible opportunity when you get to do it. But sometimes we don't get to talk to the instigator or the genius behind it, but we can see the results of it. So I think that's the difference between, for me, studying with a mentor, the person who invented that program, who wrote that song, versus this is the community that came from that, or what feeds that community. To me, it's really helpful to, and I can't find an apples for apples usually ever, but I can do what you said, and that is find a stream of that really gives me an analogy to pin my situation on. And applicable, maybe, I don't know what percentage of the time, but usually those things make a profound effect on my thinking. And if I don't use it now, I remember it, So I think models, images, mentors really are our textbook after we get out of the formal classroom.
Right. I think in recent years, an interesting model that has emerged out of necessity, our generation remembers a time when almost every church had a thriving youth choir. Those youth choirs still exist. They tend to be fewer and farther between. I've seen a few colleagues like Mark Green in Decatur and Randy Edwards in San Antonio, Clark Sorrells in Asheville, who have moved toward a more community-based youth choir model. And that's a really interesting adaptation. And again, it's a model that others might want to take a look at instead of not having, if your youth choir has disappeared, sadly, that probably would make all of us sad who care about these things. Maybe there's another way to rebirth a youth choir, but with a different model,
Right.
more of a community-based enterprise that is hosted at the church, and therefore connected to the church.
Right.
And maybe, you don't do it for this reason, but maybe that brings new people into at least your church house. And who knows whether they'll become a part of your community or not. But, just another model. So,
Well, one model that I saw when I was on sabbatical in Cambridge was Tim Brown at Clare College. Tim had the wonderful Clare Chapel. We all know Clare from John Rutter's
Right,
work, but
right.
Tim was his successor. But he had the Clare College Choir, but whenever he wanted to do a bigger work, like the Vespers, he brought in community people. And I learned from that model that, look, I may not be able to do the big work just with my people, but there are a bunch of people in my community. And if you start thinking about that in terms of outreach and other possibilities, not limiting my choir on certain project basis just to the people that are in my church, wow, that transformed my thinking. So I do that now.
Interesting.
I actually have my regular Sunday choir, but I'm also doing a project this summer on the 4th of July, and I've invited community members, and I'm rehearsing them
it's a great idea.
separately. They both have their entities, but I'm
Right.
putting them together.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of spin-off goodness of that. But the model kind of comes down to balance and numbers. I don't necessarily have all that I need to do something else. And there's the need is on both sides. The church, I need those extra people, but those people in the community really want to do this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it offers singers, for me, it offers singers, and I only do it 3 times a year, but 3 times comes along pretty soon. So.
Yeah, it does. It does. It really does. Well, that might be a good place to put a pin in our conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. We would encourage you, if you find yourself without a mentor, find someone whose work you admire, whose work and life you admire. Reach out to them. Ask them, can I meet you for a cup of coffee? I'd like to pick your brain, is the old cliche. And they're going to be honored that you think enough of their work that you want to meet with them. I know that sometimes can be daunting, depending on sort of where that person is and all the echelons and tiers of music ministry and music making that we have, and yet I think people will be grateful to meet with you and to have that cup of coffee, and who knows, that may open a door to further conversation, further growth, further creative thinking for you and your ministry and your life. Anything
The only
else?
thought I had to that, Doug, is that when I first came to ACDA, I asked my board, I said, can you give me 1 or 2 people that I would benefit from? Because I knew I'd be traveling. I knew I'd be in different places. I said, I don't care who they are, a couple people that if I sat down with them, they would contribute. Kind of a drive-by mentor, if you will.
Okay.
They gave me that list, and within the next year, I had made contact to those people, and it was, to your point, it was amazing, because these were different college presidents, someone who was a president of a bank. They were all fields, but they said, you need to know that. You need to hear something from that person. So to your point, they all gave me the time. That it was not a big ask.
Right.
So and actually, they gave me more time than I asked for.
Really?
I was trying to be, courteous to their time.
Yeah.
But in every case, they gave me more time than I had asked for. So
nice.
So it's a great idea, particularly in this day and age. I think where we really formal education and online, and we have a lot of digital resources to us, but to be in the presence of a human being of that caliber, it's an education that's worth carving out.
Yeah, well, and that leads me to add this before we sign off.
Right.
One of the things that Polyphony learned from our Harmony Project research data, and what we heard in interviews with 100 church musicians, is over and over again, I feel so isolated. There's a sense in which reaching out to a mentor may be an antidote to that isolation.
Good point. Good point.
Well, thanks for your time today. Good conversation.
Good conversation.
Yeah. Breathe, bless, and be well, friends.